The massive Zephyrian warship floated through space like a deadly crystal cathedral. Its transparent walls pulsed with blue energy, and weapons that could destroy entire planets charged along its hull. For 3,000 years, ships like this one had conquered every world they encountered. No army had ever defeated them. No species had ever made them retreat. Commander Vextar pressed his four hands against the control panel of his bike. The living vessel trembled around him, its organic walls bleeding green fluid where Zephyrian energy beams had burned through the armor. Around him, his crew of insect-like Altarians worked frantically at their stations, their compound eyes reflecting the red warning lights that flashed throughout the bridge. "Sir, we've lost another 3 ships," reported his tactical officer, her antennae twitching with stress. "The flowering dawn and swift current are gone. Only 15 vessels remain in our fleet." Vextar's mandibles clicked together in frustration. When the war began, the Altarian Defense Coalition had fielded over 300 bioships. Now, after 6 months of fighting around the planet Kepler-4 for to be, they were almost finished. The Zephyrians hadn't even used their main fleet yet. Through the transparent walls of his ship, he could see the planet below. Millions of his people lived on its surface, farmers, teachers, children who had never seen war. If the Coalition fleet failed here, those people would become slaves under Zephyrian rule, just like billions of others across the galaxy. The enemy moved in perfect formation, their crystal ships arranged in geometric patterns that had remained unchanged for centuries. Every Zephyrian captain knew exactly what to do, exactly when to fire, exactly how to destroy their enemies with maximum efficiency. It was beautiful, elegant, and absolutely deadly. "Incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship," announced the communications officer. A hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. Admiral Mordock looked exactly like what he was, a conqueror who had never known defeat. His pale blue skin seemed to glow with inner light, and his silver eyes held no mercy. The Zephyrians were an ancient race, older than most species in the galaxy, and they considered themselves superior to everyone else. "Altarian vessels," Mordock's voice echoed through the bioship's living corridors. "You have fought bravely, but your resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well as part of our empire. Continue fighting, and we will turn your planet into cosmic dust." Vextar stood straighter, despite his exhaustion. "Our answer remains the same, Admiral. We will never surrender our freedom." Mordock's expression didn't change. "Very well, prepare to watch your world die." The Zephyrian fleet began to move into bombardment formation. Their weapons could crack a planet's crust from orbit, turning continents into molten seas. Vextar had seen it happen before, during the conquest of the Silurian home system. Entire civilizations erased in a matter of hours. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice cracked with excitement, "I'm detecting ships approaching from the outer system. Unknown configuration, unknown energy signatures." Vextar moved to the sensor station, his clawed feet clicking on the organic floor. The display showed something impossible, a fleet of vessels unlike anything in known space. Instead of the graceful curves of bioships or the geometric perfection of Zephyrian crystals, these ships looked like they were built from metal and steel. Crude rectangles and cylinders welded together, covered in strange markings and what appeared to be primitive ballistic weapons. "What species builds ships like that?" whispered the tactical officer, before anyone could answer. The unknown fleet emerged from hyperspace in a formation that made no military sense. Instead of the tight, organized patterns every civilized species used, these ships scattered across 3 dimensions, like seeds thrown into the wind. Some flew high above the battle, others swooped low near the planet's atmosphere, and still others hung motionless between the 2 main fleets. The largest of the unknown ships, a massive rectangular vessel with weapons bristling from every surface, broadcast on all frequencies. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything the Altarians had ever heard, flat, mechanical, lacking the musical tones of most galactic languages. "This is Admiral Kim Minho of the United Earth Space Navy. We received distress signals from this system. All hostilities will cease immediately." Silence filled both fleets. Earth, no one had ever heard of such a place. These humans appeared on no galactic charts, held membership in no stellar confederations, and their ships looked like primitive scrap metal compared to the advanced vessels arrayed around the planet. Admiral Mordock's laughter echoed across the communication channels. "Unknown primitives, you have stumbled into a military operation of the Zephyrian Empire. Depart immediately, or be destroyed." "Negative," came the flat human response. "Civilian populations are in danger. We're intervening." Mordock's amusement turned to irritation. 3,000 years of conquest had taught the Zephyrians that all species eventually learned to fear them. These humans clearly needed a lesson. He gestured to one of his cruiser captains. "Destroy one of their ships. Make an example." The Zephyrian cruiser Void's Edge detached from the main formation and approached the human fleet. Its crystal hull gleamed with charging energy as plasma cannons prepared to fire. The ship moved with the confidence of a predator that had never encountered anything capable of harming it. But something was wrong. Instead of fleeing or forming defensive positions, like every other species in galactic history, the human ships began to move in patterns that defied all military logic. Some accelerated directly toward the approaching Zephyrian vessel, others spread out even further, and a few actually seemed to be positioning themselves between the enemy and empty space. Vexter watched in fascination and growing hope as the smaller human ships darted around the massive Zephyrian cruiser like insects around a giant. They were so fast, so unpredictable, that the enemy's targeting systems couldn't lock onto them. Then one of the human destroyers did something impossible. Instead of engaging at long range like civilized beings, it accelerated directly to the void's edge as if planning to ram. At the last second, it dove underneath the crystal ship and released a spread of metallic projectiles. The Zephyrian shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against solid matter. Moving at incredible speed, the projectiles struck the crystal hull and exploded with the fury of tiny stars. For the first time in 1,000 years, a Zephyrian warship died. As the void's edge broke apart in a cascade of shattered crystal and escaping atmosphere, Vextar realized that everything was about to change. These humans fought like no species he had ever seen. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't respect tradition. They simply did whatever was necessary to win. The galaxy's long nightmare might finally be ending. The destruction of the void's edge sent shockwaves through both fleets. Admiral Mordock stared at the wreckage floating in space, his silver eyes wide with disbelief. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever destroyed a Zephyrian cruiser in single combat. The elegant crystal fragments that had once been a mighty warship tumbled through the void like broken glass. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Kim Minho watched the tactical display with calm satisfaction. Around him, his human crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. The bridge looked nothing like the organic curves of Altarian bioships or the crystal perfection of Zephyrian vessels. Metal panels, blinking lights, and computer screens created an atmosphere that was purely functional. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from both fleets," reported Communications Officer Lee Nara. "The Zephyrians are demanding we identify ourselves. The Altarians are asking if we're here to help." Kim nodded slowly. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. "Open a channel to both fleets. Full broadcast." The transmission reached every ship in the system simultaneously. On Zephyrian bridges, crystal walls displayed the human admiral's image with perfect clarity. On Altarian bioships, living screens pulsed with bioluminescent pictures. Both species found themselves looking at a being unlike any they had encountered. "I am Admiral Kim Minho of the United Earth Space Navy," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across multiple star systems. "We detected distress signals originating from this sector. Under the Accords of 2387, we are legally obligated to assist any civilization under attack by hostile forces." Commander Vextar leaned forward in his command chair, his compound eyes studying the human's features. These Terrans looked remarkably similar to several other bipedal species. But there was something different about their expressions. Where most galactic races showed emotion through color changes, pheromone releases, or bioelectric fields, humans seemed to communicate entirely through facial movements and vocal tones. Admiral Mordock's image appeared on split screen, his pale blue skin flushed with anger. "Unknown Terrans, you have interfered in an internal matter of the Zephyrian Empire. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Kim's expression didn't change. "Admiral Mordock, I presume your reputation precedes you. However, the bombardment of civilian populations violates 17 different interstellar treaties. We cannot allow it to continue." "Treaties?" Mordock's laughter echoed across the communication channels. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We don't recognize the authority of primitive species who build ships from scrap metal. Your weapons are obsolete, your tactics are crude, and your ships look like flying garbage." Commander Vextar found himself holding his breath. Every species in the galaxy had learned not to anger the Zephyrians. Their retribution was swift and terrible. Entire star systems had been sterilized for far less insulting comments, but Admiral Kim simply smiled. It was a cold expression that somehow seemed more threatening than Mordock's rage. "Admiral, with respect, you just lost a cruiser to flying garbage. Perhaps you should reconsider your assessment." The human fleet began to move. Unlike the rigid formations favored by most galactic militaries, the Terran ships spread out in seemingly random patterns. Some moved high above the orbital plane, others dropped low toward the planet's atmosphere, and several positioned themselves in the asteroid belt that ringed the outer system. Captain Park Ji-hoon commanded the destroyer USS Yorktown, the ship that had killed the Zephyrian cruiser. His vessel was typical of human engineering, angular, functional, and bristling with weapons that looked primitive but had proven devastatingly effective. The ship's metal hull was scarred from countless battles, and its crew of 200 humans worked with mechanical precision. "Captain," reported his tactical officer, "Zephyrian fleet is moving into attack formation. They're bringing everything: 15 battleships, 30 cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels." Park studied the enemy formation on his holographic display. The Zephyrians moved like a single organism, their crystal ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that maximized their firepower while minimizing vulnerabilities. It was beautiful, elegant, and absolutely predictable. "Signal the fleet," Park ordered. "Implement Protocol Delta. All ships, scatter pattern 7. Across the human formation, ships began moving in directions that seemed to violate every principle of military science. Instead of concentrating their forces or forming defensive lines, they spread out even further. Some accelerated toward the enemy, others moved away, and a few actually seemed to be fleeing the battle entirely. The Altarian fleet watched in confusion, as their potential allies apparently panicked. Commander Vexstar's tactical officer chittered nervously. "Sir, the humans appear to be retreating. Should we prepare for final bombardment?" But Vexstar had noticed something the others missed. Despite their chaotic movements, every human ship maintained perfect communication with the others. Data streams flowed between them constantly, creating a web of information that connected the scattered vessels into a single fighting unit. Admiral Mordock observed the human movements with growing contempt. "Cowards, they scatter like insects." When faced with real military power, all ships advanced to bombardment range. "We'll destroy their pathetic fleet and then finish the Zephyrian fleet moved forward in their traditional formation. Energy, weapons charging, shields raised to maximum power. They had used these same tactics for 3 millennia, perfecting them through countless victories. Every captain knew his role, every gunner understood his target priorities, and every ship maintained its precise position in the formation. That was exactly what the humans were counting on. As the two fleets closed to engagement range, Captain Park smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were fighting the last war, using tactics designed for enemies who followed the same rules they did. But humans had learned their military doctrine in the crucible of Earth's bloody history, where survival went to the adaptive, not the traditional. All ships Park transmitted: execute attack pattern Omega. Show them what chaos theory looks like in practice. The real battle was about to begin. The battle erupted like a storm of light and metal across the dark space around Kepler-4 for 2b. Admiral Mordock expected the engagement to follow traditional patterns: 2 fleets facing each other in organized lines, exchanging fire until one side retreated or was destroyed. Instead, he found himself fighting an enemy that refused to follow any rules he understood. Captain Park, Jihoon's destroyer, USS Yorktown, dove toward the planet's atmosphere, using the gravity well to slingshot around at incredible speed. Targeting computers, designed to track ships moving in predictable patterns, couldn't lock on to the wildly maneuvering human vessel. Energy beams meant to vaporize the destroyer instead struck empty space. "Target the human flagship," Mordock ordered from his crystal command throne. "Concentrate all fire on their largest vessel." But when his fleet turned toward Admiral Kim's ship, they discovered it wasn't where their sensors said it should be. The used Defiance had moved behind a cluster of asteroids, using the rocky debris as both cover and camouflage. Human ships seemed to treat space itself as terrain to be used, hiding behind planets, diving through asteroid fields, and even using the gravity of dead moons to change direction without burning fuel. Commander Vexstar watched from his bioship as the humans demonstrated tactics his people had never imagined. Captain Linara commanded the frigate, Soul's Pride, leading 3 other ships in a spiraling attack pattern that confused Zephyrian gunners. Instead of approaching in a straight line like civilized beings, the human vessels corkscrewed through space, making themselves nearly impossible to hit. "Sir," reported Vexstar's tactical officer, "the humans are transmitting targeting data to our ships. They're showing us weak points in Zephyrian formations we never knew existed." The information flowing from human computers revealed secrets the Altarians had never discovered in centuries of warfare. Zephyrian ships, despite their beauty and power, had blind spots. Their perfect formations created gaps that could be exploited. Their energy shields had frequencies that could be disrupted. Captain Choi Hyunwoo commanded the heavy cruiser Bison's Wrath, and he decided to demonstrate something the galaxy had never seen: human boarding tactics. While other species considered ship-to-ship combat the only civilized way to fight, humans had different ideas about warfare. "Marines 2 boarding pods," Hyunwoo announced. "Target the Zephyrian cruiser Crystal Dawn. Standard, breach and clear." The human Marines wore powered armor that looked crude compared to elegant Zephyrian personal shields. But the armor was designed for one purpose: close combat in hostile environments. They fired themselves at the enemy ship in small pods, cutting through crystal hulls with plasma torches and clearing corridors with projectile weapons. The Zephyrians had never faced enemies inside their own ships. Their elegant corridors became battlegrounds as humans in bulky armor fought crystalline warriors who had never trained for close combat. The beauty of Zephyrian ship design, with its open spaces and artistic curves, became a liability when faced with soldiers who specialized in urban warfare. Admiral Mordock found himself fighting 3 different battles simultaneously. His fleet was engaged with the scattered human vessels. Altarian bioships were using human tactical data to attack his formations from unexpected angles, and human boarding parties were capturing his ships from the inside. "This is impossible," he muttered, watching his tactical displays show chaos where there should have been order. No species fights like this. Where is their honor? Where is their military discipline? The answer came from Commander Song Yuna, captain of the Altarian vessel Living Storm. She had been listening to human communications, learning their language through her ship's biocomputer. What she heard changed her understanding of warfare forever. "They don't fight for honor," she reported to Vex Star. "They fight to win. Every tactic they use is designed for maximum effectiveness, not maximum glory. They call it asymmetric warfare, using unexpected methods to defeat superior forces." The turning point came when 3 human destroyers executed what they called Protocol 7. The ships Inchin's Fury, Daegu's Hammer, and Guangzhu's Sword accelerated directly toward Mordock's flagship, the massive dreadnought Crystal Throne. Every sensor indicated they were planning suicide attacks. Mordock ordered maximum shields and moved his ship out of formation to avoid the collision. The massive dreadnought, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, found itself isolated from its protective escort. That was exactly what the humans wanted. At the last second, the 3 destroyers veered away, having accomplished their real mission. Behind them came Captain Park's Yorktown and 2 Altarian bioships, their weapons targeted at the flagship's now exposed rear sections. The attack was perfectly coordinated through human communication networks, striking weak points that Zephyrian designers had never expected to be vulnerable. The Crystal Throne shuddered as kinetic projectiles and bioweapons tore through its rear armor. For the first time in 8 centuries, the flagship of the Zephyrian fleet was seriously damaged. Crystal fragments and escaping atmosphere created a glittering cloud around the mighty vessel as it listed to one side. "Impossible," Mordock whispered, feeling his ship shake around him. "How can primitives with metal ships defeat crystal perfection?" Captain Park answered that question as his destroyer swept past the damaged flagship. "Because we don't fight fair, Admiral, we fight smart." Across the battlefield, human ships continued their chaotic dance, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. They used every trick Earth's bloody history had taught them: deception, misdirection, overwhelming firepower applied at the enemy's weakest points, an absolute disregard for traditional military honor. The age of predictable warfare was ending. In its place, something new and terrifying was being born, a style of combat that valued results over ritual, effectiveness over elegance, and victory over all other considerations. News of the impossible victory traveled across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every civilized world knew that the mighty Zephyrian fleet had been defeated by unknown aliens called humans. Species that had hidden in fear for centuries suddenly began to whisper about rebellion. The word hope was spoken aloud for the first time in generations. On the liberated planet Kepler 442b, Admiral Kim established something that had never existed before: a school for war. The Tactical Integration Academy rose from the ruins of a Zephyrian fortress, its metal buildings stark and functional compared to the elegant crystal structures the enemy had preferred. Here, military officers from dozens of species came to learn how humans fought. Colonel Park Soyan stood before a classroom filled with beings she could barely have imagined months earlier. Thalorian methane breathers sat next to crystalline selenites, their bodies glowing with inner light. Insect-like Altarians shared desks with plant-based Verdani, whose leaves rustled when they communicated. All of them wanted to learn the same thing: how to defeat enemies who had seemed invincible. "The first lesson," Park began, her voice translated into 17 different languages simultaneously, "is to forget everything you know about honorable combat. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose. We cannot." The alien officers struggled with concepts that seemed to violate every military tradition in the galaxy. Major Lim Doyan demonstrated boarding tactics to a group of selenites who had never considered fighting inside enemy ships. Their crystalline bodies could naturally resist energy weapons, but they had no experience with the brutal close-quarters combat that humans had perfected. "Your enemy expects you to fight at long range with elegant beam weapons," Lim explained, hefting a crude-looking projectile rifle. "Instead, you breach their hull, get inside, and force them to fight in conditions they never trained for. Fear is a weapon just like any other." Captain Jungmin Seo taught fighter coordination to pilots who had spent centuries flying in perfect formations. The aliens watched in amazement as human fighters moved in seemingly random patterns that somehow coordinated into devastating attacks. No 2 pilots flew the same way, yet they worked together like parts of a single machine. "Chaos is not the absence of order," Jung explained to her mixed class of alien pilots. It's a different kind of order, one your enemies can't predict or counter. Randomness becomes your shield, unpredictability becomes your sword. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire struggled to understand what had happened to them. Admiral Mordock sat in his rebuilt flagship, studying battle recordings for the 1000th time. The elegant crystal walls of his command center displayed holographic recreations of the battle, showing human ships dancing through space in patterns that hurt his brain to watch. "They fight like animals," complained Fleet Captain Zorvik, his pale blue skin flickering with frustrated by no formation, no honor, no respect for military tradition. "How can we defend against enemies who refuse to follow the rules?" Mordock had no answer. The Zephyrian military had been built on 3,000 years of successful conquest. Every tactic, every formation, every weapon had been tested against civilized opponents who understood proper warfare. The humans fought like no civilized species ever had. "Perhaps," suggested strategic analyst Veltar, her silver eyes dim with worry, "we should adapt their methods to our own forces." The suggestion caused shocked silence throughout the command center. Adapt, change tactics that had conquered the galaxy? The idea seemed almost blasphemous to beings who had never known defeat. But defeat was exactly what happened at the Battle of the Helix Nebula. Admiral Kim arrived with a fleet that included not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen coalition species, all trained in human tactical doctrine. The Zephyrians had prepared for human scatter tactics, positioning their forces to counter the chaotic movements they expected. Instead, Kim ordered a frontal assault. The coalition fleet punched through Zephyrian lines like a metal fist through crystal glass. Human ships led the charge, their crude armor absorbing energy beams that should have vaporized them. Behind them came Altarian bioships, using human coordination protocols. Thylorian fighters moving in unpredictable swarms, and converted civilian vessels crewed by volunteers who had learned that victory mattered more than survival. Captain Song Yuna commanded the Altarian cruiser New Dawn, her living ship responding to human tactical networks with unprecedented efficiency. The biovessel's organic weapons, guided by human targeting computers, struck with surgical precision at weak points in Zephyrian formations. "Target their command ship," came the transmission from Admiral Kim. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the flagship's shield generators." The attack was perfectly coordinated despite appearing chaotic to outside observers. Human ships drew enemy fire while Altarian vessels struck from unexpected angles. Thylorian fighters swarmed around larger ships like angry insects, their small weapons overloading shield systems through sheer volume of fire. The Zephyrian flagship, Eternal Glory, found itself surrounded by enemies that fought like nothing in their experience. Its captain, Admiral Kethmer, watched his perfect formation dissolve into scattered individual ships, each fighting for survival rather than following strategic plans. "They're inside our formation," he reported to Mordock, his voice tight with fear. "Our own ships are blocking our firing solutions. We can't use our heavy weapons without hitting our own forces." That was exactly what the humans had planned. By forcing the Zephyrians to break formation, they had turned the enemy's greatest strength, coordinated firepower, into a weakness. Beautiful crystal ships that had been designed to fight in perfect unity found themselves isolated and vulnerable. The battle ended with another Zephyrian defeat, this one even more crushing than the first. As news spread across the galaxy, entire star systems began declaring independence from the Empire. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, replaced by something new and unpredictable. In the wreckage of the Eternal Glory, Admiral Kethmer sent a final transmission before his ships. Life support failed. "They don't just fight differently, they think differently. How do you defeat an enemy that refuses to be civilized?" The answer, floating among the crystal debris, was simple. You didn't. The crystal spires of Morthok Prime gleamed against the black of space, beautiful and terrible in their alien perfection. Around the Zephyrian homeworld, Fleet Admiral Mordock had assembled the last great armada of his people, over 1,000 ships, arranged in formations that had conquered the galaxy for 3 millennia. Every remaining vessel of the Empire floated, in perfect geometric patterns, their crystal hulls reflecting starlight like deadly jewels. Mordock stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Divine Supremacy, watching the outer system sensors for signs of the approaching enemy. His pale blue skin flickered with the biopatterns of determination mixed with fear. This would be the final battle. Either the humans and their coalition allies would be destroyed here, or the Zephyrian Empire would fall forever. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, detecting massive hyperspace signatures, "the enemy fleet is arriving." What emerged from the swirling portals of hyperspace made Mordecai's silver eyes widen in disbelief. Admiral Kim hadn't brought a traditional fleet. Instead, thousands of vessels of every shape and size spread across the system, converted cargo haulers, mining ships, passenger liners, even small civilian craft that had been hastily fitted with weapons and shield generators. Captain Yuhej sat in the cramped cockpit of her fighter, one of hundreds launched from converted cargo ships. Around her, pilots from dozens of species flew in loose formations that would have horrified any military academy instructor. Human fighters mixed with Altarian biocraft, Thylorian atmospheric interceptors, and improvised vessels that looked like they had been welded together in garage workshops. All squadrons, this is Admiral Kim, came the transmission across all frequencies. Today we end 3,000 years of tyranny. Remember, we're not here to fight fair, we're here to win. The human admiral's flagship, still the battle-scarred used Defiance, broadcast on all channels as the two fleets faced each other across the vast emptiness between planets. Kim's image appeared on every screen in both armadas, human and alien. Alike could see his tired eyes and graying hair, the face of a man who had carried the weight of galactic war. Fleet Admiral Mordok, Kim's voice carried clearly through the void. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender. Not because we're merciful, but because we're efficient. This war ends today, one way or another. Mordok's laughter echoed across the communication channels, but there was no real amusement in the sound. You dare threaten the might of the Zephyrian Empire with converted garbage haulers. Your rabble fleet is 3 times larger than mine, but my ships are weapons of art, perfected over millennia. Your crude metal vessels are no match for crystal perfection. Admiral, Kim replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. You still don't understand what you're fighting. We didn't come here to match your perfection. We came here to make it irrelevant. The battle began with Mordok's order to advance. The Zephyrian fleet moved like a single living entity, their crystal ships maintaining perfect distances and angles as they had for countless victories. Energy weapons charged along elegant hulls, and shields raised to maximum power created halos of blue light around each vessel. But as the armadas closed to engagement range, something unprecedented happened. The civilian ships didn't flee or form defensive lines. Instead, they began launching smaller craft, not just fighters, but cargo pods, escape shuttles, maintenance drones, and even personal spacecraft. In minutes, the space between the fleets filled with thousands of tiny vessels moving in every direction at once. Commander Park Ji-hoon, now captain of the heavy cruiser New Seoul, watched his tactical display show a cloud of contacts so dense it looked like static. All ships, implement swarm protocol. Let's show them what chaos really looks like. The Zephyrian gunners found themselves facing an impossible targeting situation. Their elegant weapons, designed to engage major warships at long range, couldn't track the thousands of small craft darting between the battle lines. Energy beams meant to vaporize cruisers instead struck empty space as fighters and converted shuttles danced around them like angry insects. Captain Song Yuna led a squadron of mixed fighters through the Zephyrian formation, her Altarian responding to human tactical networks with perfect coordination. Around her, Thylorian pilots breathed methane, while human pilots breathed oxygen. Yet they fought as one unit through the miracle of quantum communication links. Target the shield generators, she transmitted to her diverse squadron. Remember, you're training small, fast, coordinated strikes. Make them think there are 10 times as many of us. The fighters swarmed over Zephyrian battleships like antibodies attacking an infection. Their small weapons couldn't destroy major warships, but they didn't need to. Instead, they targeted specific systems, shield generators, weapon mounts, sensor arrays, and communication relays. Death by 1,000 cuts. Humans called it. Admiral Mordok watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos as his ships found themselves unable to coordinate. Communication relays went dark, targeting computers malfunctioned, and weapon systems failed under the assault of hundreds of tiny attackers. His magnificent crystal vessels, designed to fight other capital ships, had no defense against enemies, too small and numerous to effectively target. This is not warfare, he whispered, watching a 1,000-year-old battleship go dark as its power systems were systematically destroyed by fighters no larger than lifeboats. This is madness. Captain Yu Hejin's fighter swooped past the bridge of the Divine Supremacy, her weapons stitching a line of small explosions across the flagship's sensor array. Through her canopy, she could see Zephyrian crew members staring out in shock at the tiny craft that was crippling their mighty vessel. No, she transmitted back to Mordok, her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. This is evolution. The war ended not with the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet, but with their complete inability to fight back. Surrounded by thousands of small crafts they couldn't effectively target, their formations broken and their communications severed. The crystal ships floated helplessly as the coalition closed in. Mordok's final transmission before his flagship lost power was heard across the galaxy. I surrender. The Empire, surrenders.